Alright, so we're here again with Bobby NG. Bobby NG has been ordered to receive a feeding. So the first thing that we're going to do is check their chart, make sure that we check the when the feeding is supposed to be given, the type of formula to be used, the rate of infusion, the frequency of the feedings. And then after we check that, we're going to gather all of our equipment and we're going to enter the room. Hello, Bobby. Today we're going to be doing your,
I gotta write down the information.
we're going to be giving you a supplement feeding. The procedure should take no longer than 5 to 10 minutes. This was already connected to sectioning. So at this point, I'm going to, I would have done my 2-patient identifier, proper body mechanics, patient privacy, patient safety, follow agency policies. I'm going to check the formula that I'm using, checking the packaging integrity, expiration dates, the contents. I'm also going to mix it well. If it's an intermittent feeding, we're going to have the formula be room temperature. We're going to warm it up to room temperature. If it's a continuous feeding, we're going to have it be cool but not cold. So if this were like a pump feeding, we would, again, we would check the formula, everything about it. That we'd also be labeling it for both ways. We'd be labeling the bottle with the date, time, frequency, our initials. So then if it were a pump feeding, we'd be, after labeling it, we'd be spiking the bag or bottle, we'd be hanging out on the pole, we'd be running the tubing through the pump, we'd be setting the date, time, frequency for both methods. For the hanging out on the pole, we're gonna be labeling the bottle, saying date, type, frequency, initials, warning for enteric use only, not for IV use. We're gonna make sure that the lines aren't compatible with the IV lines, the Lurelax system. So then for our feeding, we are going to, so we have all our supplies, we checked everything. So in our chart, we would have confirmed that X-ray has confirmed placement of the tubing in the stomach. When we're at bedside, we're going to auscultate for air, and we're going to check gastric contents, make sure that it's green, odorless, clear. We could check the pH, it should be less than 5. If we were to be doing the J-tube or the PEG method tubing, we would not be auscultating for air, or make sure that we don't do that. Instead, for those, we'd just be cleaning the connectors, we'd be flushing the lines, then we would give the feeding and we'd flush again. So we're gonna get going with our feeding. So I'm gonna perform hand hygiene and don my clean procedure gloves. I'm going to confirm placement. I'm gonna, so in the last video I didn't mention, and I'm mentioning now, that when we're done placing the tube, we're gonna measure how long the outside of the tubing is. So for this patient, it's around like 65 centimeters. So when I come in to give the feeding, I'd be rechecking that to make sure that it hasn't come out at all. It's still in good placement. Another thing, that when I was inserting the tube, I had made sure that, I didn't mention this and I am now, that the pillow is behind their head, neck, and shoulders. When we're putting it in the nose, we're gonna have them hyperextend their neck. When we're going down the throat, we're gonna have them flex their neck. I didn't mention that, so just wanted to mention that now. So after we measured the outside of the tube, it's good, it's the same measurement. We're gonna auscultate for air in the stomach when we inject the air to make sure that it's in the stomach. So we've got our syringe. Alright, we're gonna disconnect from her suctioning. Okay, about ready, we're gonna auscultate. Okay, I did hear a whooshing sound. And I'm just gonna pull back to check the gastric content. It is green, clear, odorless, so I'm gonna put that back in there. And again, I would have checked the chart for the X-ray confirmation of placement. So, Bobby and G has been ordered to receive 100 mLs of supplement feeding, so I'm going to put that in the graduated cylinder, measuring it. Okay. So, now we're going to get ready. We're going to take the plunger out. Alright, so when we're putting it in, we're going to clamp off the tubing by pinching it. And we're not going to do it all at once. We're going to do like the first 60 mLs. We're going to hold it about around 18 inches above. So this is based on gravity right now, so if we were to hold it up higher, the infusion rate would be quicker. If we hold it lower, the infusion rate would be slower. So we're going to hold about 18 inches. We're going to unclamp and let that go in. Alright, once it's in, we're going to reclamp it, and we're going to pour the remaining of our remaining 40 mLs. Let that infuse. Alright, then we're going to flush the tubing with tap water, about 50 mLs. Alright, so the feeding is done. So we're going to take the syringe off. Okay, so if we were to be doing a subsequent feeding, before we were to give the next feeding, we would check the gastric residuals. If it were more than 50 mLs, we're going to go ahead and put it into a graduated cylinder. If it's less than 250 mLs, we're good to give the next feeding. If it's more than 250 mLs, then we're going to wait an hour. We're going to come back and check. If it's less than 250 mLs at that point, we're going to give the next feeding about like 50% of the rate. If it were again more than 250 mLs, we're going to hold the feeding. We're going to contact the patient's doctor, and we're not going to give the feeding for at least 4 more hours. So the feeding has been given. We're going to keep the patient at least 30 degrees, elevated at least 30 degrees for 30 to 60 minutes after the procedure. We're going to, if the patient were NPO, we were going to make sure that we keep their mouth wet, moist. We're going to help them with oral hygiene if needed. And, you know, at this, I could take my gloves off and perform hand hygiene. The formula bottle, I'm going to make sure that I date and time it with my initials, so that if it's going to be used again for subsequent feedings, they can check that before they give it, make sure it's not expired or anything. So the feeding has been given. She's going to stay elevated. I'm going to make sure she has her call light. I'm going to make sure that she's good. I'm going to lower her bed back down, put her rail back up, thank her for letting me perform her feeding. And that is how you do an NG tube feeding. One thing I forgot to mention for this video is that I would have a linen saver pad on the patient when performing the feeding, just in case there was any leaking. So I just forgot to mention that. Wanted to add that.